Mark again. And Mark,
Yes, we've proved the point today, Mike, because we're not too sure what is news and what is clown world, as that description is. So here was a serious slide. We're looking at it on screen and we're thinking it's still something to do with an advert.
But in fact, it's the CDC, Mark.
Yeah. Well, it is a little bit of clown world, where clown world meets news, right? Reality is a strange thing these days. According to Barnes & Noble, a clerk I talked to yesterday at one of the local outlets of that large nationwide book chain, December 2023 was the release date, as shown, for the Junior Disease Detectives Operation Outbreak. And this is a booklet. They call it a graphic novel. I call it a comic book, put out by USDHHS, the CDC, the USDA, and who knew, 4-H, which usually sponsors, equestrian events at county fairs. And what this is, by all indications, and I studied it quite a bit, is a way to reach the preteen and teen demographic and convince them that health authorities know what needs to be known, they need not be questioned, and that healthcare consists of what those authorities prioritize and promote, including vaccines. Just trust the science, trust the vaccines. If you want to be good detectives, learn from the CDC and help the CDC root out infectious diseases. Don't be the kind of detective that questions the CDC like UK Column might. You don't want to question them. Be the kind of detective that doesn't ask too many questions to authorities, which isn't really a detective at all. But anyway, the foreword just says, the following story is a work of fiction, but real public health threats and diseases are presented. The CDC hopes that this story raises youth awareness of infectious diseases and so on, and the threats to public health that they pose. And it talks about the sponsors and whatnot. But moving on from there, this is some samples of what you look at when you open this thing. Now, one of the things that became evident during the COVID scare and COVIDocracy and all that, the bureaucracy that grew up around COVID, was that they wanted to view infectious diseases as a overarching enemy. And to fight that enemy, it's all for one and one for all. So you take the vaccine just as you would be a good soldier. And if you don't take that vaccine, you're being the kind of soldier that might go AWOL, that might desert the troops, right? So you really don't belong in polite society. So accordingly, we have in this graphic here that we're showing now, a scene where the teens who are the characters within this graphic novel / comic book are seeing marauding, slobbering germs in the form of an enemy, sort of like the Lord of the Rings, coming over the hill, and they're shooting arrows at them, and they're trying to prevent them from breaching the drawbridge and entering the castle. And here we have one of the characters in this next slide, and influenza is shown as this red-haired, unibrow, demonic, greenish character, kind of green like the Incredible Hulk. So individual germs for individual diseases are shown as individual kinds of ghouls. And this is one example. And here in this next one, just to outline more of the conceptual of what's going on here, the conceptual framework, we have another one of our teen heroes, a character in the graphic novel. He's running away from germs who are, in this case, characterized as red insect-like, almost mantis-style beings that are chasing him, and they're going to kill him, and they're roaring behind him. And then when you go to the next slide, you see that he finally makes it into a government lab. He breaks his way in just in time and takes a flask of some kind of potion. He has no idea what it is. It's not labeled, and it's glowing. It actually has a phosphorescence, and he just gulps it down. So the message is, you can trust the government's potions and concoctions so much, you need only just gulp them down without questioning, and then that disease in the form of a monster will stay away. So this is what it's about. Now, in the next slide, we're going to look at the back cover of this. And this is my opinion, guys. You can tell me if I overreached on this. To the left is the back cover of the CDC HHS comic book that we just looked at. And to the right is from the U.S. sci-fi TV drama from the 1960s, The Twilight Zone with Rod Serling. there's probably more than a passing resemblance there. And usually a vortex or vector is associated, at least commonly, with a hypnosis. And a pastor friend of mine, he called this whole comic book idea, looking at it from a spiritual point of view, he called it subliminal indoctrination. And so that's what the CDC has come out with. The book is about a character named Eddie who gets sick at the fair. And then all the other friends of his who went to the fair with him and also attended a CDC class with him, as one of their own gets sick, one of their own soldiers, if you will, gets sick, then they all go out and research how to make Eddie better. And in so doing, they have these fantasies about medieval battles and fantasies about being chased by monsters. And so it's comical in a way, but yet it seems like they're trying to reach a demographic that maybe they think they haven't lost. I believe they think they've lost the narrative to a point. This is my opinion. And they're trying to reach a demographic that they can hang on to so they don't lose the narrative altogether. And that's my take on it. And that's what it looks like. Any comments, gentlemen?
Well, Mark, I'll come back straight away and say, for me, it's obvious that they're using applied behavioral psychology wherever they can. And the use of cartoons is to target principally younger people. But as the UK Column News has shown over a great many years, we're seeing more and more childish material being presented at adults in UK and the USA in order to convince them to follow government policy. With regard to your comment, they're losing the narrative. I think this is absolutely true. We are seeing a desperation in these people. Boris Johnson, I think, is so angry, for example, with the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin, because Boris knows millions and millions of people have paid attention to that interview and what Putin has said, and nobody's paying attention to Boris Johnson. So these people are really getting very nervous, but applied psychology is the meat of it. We've also reported, I can't remember the lady's name, but a senior UN official who was also boasting that the UN was going to use applied behavioral psychology in order to advance the vaccine program worldwide. So this stuff is ingrained. We know that UK had a major part to play in the origins of applied political psychology in the behavioral insights team. And clearly this has now gone worldwide. So it has to be called out for what it is. And I'd say thank you for that report, Mark.
You got another comment?
Yeah.
If I one more thing, I found it at a local library in large stacks. And I also found out that it was originally produced, came into existence in 2018. But it's being evidently reissued as a new thing December of 2023. So it's interesting that this was created before the pandemic, and it talks in there about hospitals being overwhelmed, about an infectious flu spreading around the world, and about the streets of major cities and other towns being almost empty before the COVID thing came along.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Right.